So this module, INM 4.32 computer applications, basically these are the software tools I'm going to use throughout the sessions. Uh, First of all, I will use Google Colab environment, which is, Python you can install in your machine, definitely. But since you are actually not going to develop any programs as such in the course modules, we thought of using programming as a tool. And this Google Colab is one of the notebook type development environment available, right? So Python is one popular choice. So I'll be using that. It's online too. And the second one is like if you want to work offline without connecting to the internet, then there's an offline version called Jupyter Lab, which you can install, right? You can visit the jupyter.org and you can download and install. Then you don't need, internet connectivity, right? Which is offline, right? Both are the same. But when I'm delivering sessions, I'll be using the first one, that is Colab, which I will explain, after few slides. Right. Let's move to the next one. Right. Again, textbooks, those who are interested reading and know more details. My primary text and almost, most of the lecture material actually based on the book by Alan Downey. So there's a free version available with this link. If you go to https green tpress.com WP Learning with Python, that is freely available. And the newest version of this is known as Think Python, right? So quite interesting text. Those who are new, I highly recommend you refer something. But if you want to know a little bit theory as well. But let's say you are only interested in learning Python, then maybe there are many resources. But one thing people can commonly start with Python tutorial. With the W3 schools, usually they provide language in different language trainings, so you can visit there. So it's a very simple tutorial you can follow, right? So those are the basics, administrative stuff, and then the course content and the references. Let's start the basics. So I hope everybody is ready. So remember that you have to follow from beginning to the end. If you miss some of the session, you might not be able to catch it up, especially if you are new to programming and also Python. Right. Before we start, I would like to discuss a couple of ideas why people talk about Python programming. Because if you look at what has happened over the last couple of years in programming languages, if you look at the Python is one of the top programming language, right? So for example, there's a website called Yo, which rank all the programming languages. So let me share that. Okay, so this is one of the websites which rank programming languages every month or so. And as you can see, right, the Python is number one. And you can see the statistics from last April also. Python was number one. So quite popular compared to other programming languages, right? So, knowing Python is, very important, as you can see, since one of the top programming language, and it is easy to learn. So those who are going to learn programming for the first time, I'm pretty sure you will enjoy, programming in Python. Right. So similarly, there are other, advantages why people actually prefer Python over the years. The first one you will see, it will be very simple. the syntax, for example, easy to understand, easy to learn. And then when you develop let's say you develop a software or you develop a small application, and you can run it starting from your mobile to even the supercomputers, the computers at places like Google and NASA. You can run irrespective where you have actually developed. Very interesting. Not only that, it's free and open source. You know that some of the programming languages you have commercialized proprietary software, which you need to pay some license fees, but here is totally free. And if I go down, there are many others. The very interesting and why Python popular is you can do anything with Python using the extensive library available. For example, one of the niche area in use in Python is data science or data analytics area, where people actively using Python for data analytics, right? So those who are interested, I think you better start. Right. As you can see, Python is a high-level programming like C, C++, and Java. I heard some of you have already learned some programming language. The first one we need to understand, there are like two modes available. One is interactive mode, the other one is script mode, which you can actually develop the program. But in our case, we are using Colab environment. Because of that, we can start directly from the browser, right? So that means it's basically has an interactive mode, right? Okay, so let me show you how we could start, looking at a little bit of programming. So let me share the screen. So I'm going to share the whole screen. Right. Can you open up a browser window? Right. And then go to this web address, Colab research.google.com. Right. Visit this web address. So I put this in the chat as well. In case if you missed, you can got this. Okay. And then once you get this window, there's a place we can create a notebook environment. I will explain what this is. Click on the button, new notebook, right? Can you click this one? There's a button, two buttons, new notebook and cancel. Click on new notebook, which will create a separate environment where we can start, writing programs. If you have finished up to this point, please raise your hands. If you go down the three dots, you can see that, within this, we can say that, okay, raise your hands. If you go to reactions, and then raise your hands. If you finish your work. Okay, good. We have two already, came up to this point. How about the others? Right now, I can see Adarshi and Nilantha finished. How about the others? Sitara, Minoli, Sanuri, have you finished? Anuttara, finished? Right. You can lower the hands. I am assuming that everybody, got into this place. Right. Now, this is called a notebook environment. Why we call a notebook? Uh, because you can have both code cells as well as text cells. Now, for example, in code cell mean you can type some Python statement. For example, let me put 2 plus 3. You know what will happen. And then press run button here. There's a run button. Click on this. So in this environment, when you type some small script like this, it will run and show you the answer in the same place. So initially it might take some time, right? And you will see the answer is 5. Okay, got it? Yes, have you finished up to this point? You can just raise your hands, just indicate that whether you able to run a small code in a code cell. Okay, Anuttara done. What about the others? Adashi done? Were you able to finish up to this point? Right, that's what we call code windows, code cells. I'm going to click another code window or code cell. We click it and you will get another one. We can say, okay, 10 divided by 5. Division indicate using slash. Now you can see it's a bit faster. When I say 10 divided by 5, you get 2 as the answer. Right. Okay. Now, let me take another code window. I'm going to just print a message. So type print. And remember that when you type print, it should be all simple. And within single quote, I'm going to say hello world. So if I rerun this, you can see that exact message is printed here. Right? Finish up to this point. So as you can see, so far what we did, we use, adding two numbers, dividing two numbers, and we use a print function. But we don't know much about the print function. So we can use another function called help function to get to know more about print function. Let me show you. Right, I'm going back again. So I'm going to get another code window. Every time when I need to do something, I will take a separate code windows. In that way, it will be easier for us. So I will type this help. Within bracket, I will type print. Now, meaning of this command is, okay, I would like to know more about print function. And when you run this, click on this run button, it will give you some details. It looks like something like this, which some of you might not understand right now, but let me explain. But I would like to know whether you have finished up to this point. So always please try to indicate by raising your hands if you finish up to that point. Right, good, everyone. Thanks, you can lower the hands. Now you can read, try to read, because this is the first time. And this is the best place to get the help. If I read from the beginning, it says, okay, help on built-in function, print in module built-ins and print. It's a print function, 3 dots is there. And it says print value and comma 3 dots. Okay, so that means you can print any number of values. The 3 dots means any number of values. So it means, for example, I can print. If I want to print a message, I usually type a single quote. So I can say, okay, INM, right? So we can directly write this. And then we can, write things like, right? For example, INM, our course name is 4032. So this is one message, comma, another message. Let's put computer applications. This is 2 messages, but we separate with the comma. So it's allowed here because it says print value and 3 dots, which indicates that, okay, so we will use both. So in this particular case, what happens when you use a comma and multiple value, just print. We normally call concatenation, which I will discuss later. Okay, so this part indicates that, okay, we can, use to print multiple values. So you can see here, earlier we had only just one value. Right here, we have 2 values. So it's possible in Python. Next. Okay, let me explain more things about this. The next problem is like when we want to use, right? When we want to use the print function and it says how to use them, right? And if you read the second one here, the next one, SCP, separation, it's a space. So string insert between the values, default a space. So if you do not change, when you have multiple values, so in between you will have a space. So let me change and see. So what I'm going to, within the 2, I'm going to enter colon. Let's see how we are going to do this. So I can say print INM 4032 computer applications and separation. There's something called separation. I will say it's a colon. So let me review this. So if I go back to my slide, so you can see here, it says SCP, string insert between a default space. So when I put sep equals colon, and if I press run, see what happens. So in between these two, instead of a space, you will have commas. Right? So the point that you have to take from this is, whenever you need some help, you can try to use, right? In this particular case, we have, two different values, and then we use commas, sorry, colon to separate the two. Right. Okay. Now that we have learned how to use help, we can go back and again, we can talk about the note. Right. So getting help, especially when you want to use a particular function, like in this particular case, we want to know more details about the print function, we can write help print. But if you need like more general help, you can just say help, right? Okay, make a note of this. Right, now let's talk about a little bit of theory. The first thing we are going to discuss is called constant and variable. Now, when you take numbers as it is, it won't change during the program execution. But some cases, the value may change during the execution, so which is called variables. Right. Okay, let's move on to more on constants. Now there are different data formats we can use. You can see there are different ways of numbers representation available. In this case, we have number, we have whole number 5, and the second number we have 1.23, a number with a decimal place, and 9.25 to the minus 3, right? It's the scientific way of representing a number. Then we have strings. Remember, we can use either single quotes or double quotes, right? So I will go back to my slide just to show you. Now here I have used single quote. I'll take a new window. Let me say print single quote, hello world. Doesn't matter, you will get the outcome. Right? And you can also use double quotes. Let me take another code window. So you can see here we have single quotes, here we have double quotes. But outcome will be the same, right? Outcome will be the same. Right, if you have finished up to this point, please raise your hands. So now we have seen how numbers are represented. For example, you can just type 5 and then you will get 5 as it is. And you can use a number with the decimal point. You can take it number as it is. So for example, so when you have like this, we have 5. So 5, you get the number as it is, or else you can use print 5. Here we don't have to use any quotes. Quotes are used when we have to print a message or a string, right? But the third number is very interesting. 9.25 E minus 3. Let me explain that. (9.25 E minus 3). This is sometimes we call standard, or scientific notation. Now here E represents the 10 to the power. So this is similar to 9.25 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 3. So when you run it, you will get 0.00925. Okay, quick question. So if I type this, what will happen? 1E3. Can you type the answer in the chat? So what is the answer you are getting if I type 1E3? So it is 1 into 10 to the power 3, right? So that is 1000. But since this is actually multiplied by a fractional number, usually you will get with the answer with a fractional number. Okay. I think now you are clear about this. Okay, so these are known as constant because during the program execution, the values will not change. The values are as it is, right? Okay, now a little bit more on numbers. So usually we can talk about different types of numbers. The whole numbers in Python we call int or integers. So if you have whole numbers are known as integer data type. Then if you have a number with a decimal point, then it is known as floating point. In short, we say float. Then there are complex numbers as well. If you are doing like electrical engineering, for example, you need to represent complex numbers. In complex numbers, you have a real and imaginary part. If you're not familiar, just forget about it, right? So that also you can represent. Now, if I get this, right now, let me type some numbers. Now, for example, if you take 508, this is taken as a whole number, integer type. But if you use 508 with decimal point, then it will take as a, floating point number, right? Even without 0, if you just put a dot, Python takes it as a, right, floating point number. Again, very important. And when you get e to the power, that also the same. Right, next one. Now, there's another function called type function, which gives us how Python recognizes the types, right? Now, for example, earlier we have seen, if you just say 508, let me choose type 508. So this function, what it does, right? It tells us the type of this, and it says integer. That means a whole number. At the same time, if you say type 508 with a decimal point, then it's known as a float number. We will have float data type. So now we discuss three different types of functions: the print function, help function, and the type function. Right. Try the other one as well. And let's say we'll put a message. Let me say type, single quote, hello world. Yes, now this time it is identified as string data type. Yes, string data type. Try examples given on the screen, the slide. And when you finish, please raise your hands. Right. Now let's try the last one. And if you try the last one as it is, you will get an error. And there's a reason why we are getting an error. Usually, in practice, when we are writing a large number, we used to make a group of 3. But if you use this within Python, usually you will get an error. Because in Python, there's a special meaning for the comma, right? And what you get is not a number. So, for example, if you want to represent 1 million, within this, just type without any groups. Just remove, right? And then you can actually represent the number. So remember this, again, very important. And this is known as integer. Right, okay. Let's move to the next one. Now, earlier I actually discussed in very brief about the string values in Python. Usually, if you want to type any message, you can either use single quotes or double quotes. Now, can one of you tell me why there are two representations like this? Why not one way? What is the reason? Yes. We have already seen when you want to represent a message, we can either use single quotes or double quotes. right? Okay. Now, you already have these codes, for example, single quote or double quote as a part of the string. So let me explain. So I will take this. I'll take a code window, right? So let me say print. I'm going to use single quote and I'm going to say, okay, what's your name? What's your name? The problem with that is when you run it, since there are 3 single quotes, Python confuses which two we have to use, right? So if you want to use in the same, so you better change this. So instead of single quote, when single quote as a part of the string, we can use double quotes. We will use double quotes. Right? Now, as you can see, when quotes are part of the string, you have to use the other quote. So for example, let's say I want to say hi with double quotes. So if I use double quotes, hi, double quotes, then usually you will get an error. If I say print, so this definitely gives an error. But if you want to like avoid this one, right? So we can use single quotes here. So what happens when you switch it? It will print hi with double quotes. Yes? Can you raise your hand, those who are finished? Okay, let's move to the next one. Now let's say I want to write like 2 lines. So if I try to do this, let's say print, I'm going to say, okay, PGIS, and I'm going to go to the next line, and I'm going to say, okay, University of Peradeniya. If I try to run this, you will get an error. Remember, the single quote or double quotes is used for single line strings. If you want to write multi-line strings, you have to either use triple single quotes like this. We have to use triple single quotes or triple double quotes. So here we have triple single quotes and I can use triple double quotes. Yes. So this is how we can actually print multi-line strings. So now that we have discussed about the use of strings, so just to summarize, you can either use single quotes or double quotes if you are using single line strings. Why there are 2 representations? Sometimes this could be a part of the strings. Next, when you want to print multi-line strings, make sure you use either triple single quotes or triple double quotes. Right, small exercise. Can you give command to print these 2 messages exactly as it is? I need 2 commands. First one command. The second one, another command. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, so far we discussed about the constant only. But often when we write programs, we need, right, use values that are changing within the program. So variables we use to store some information, and it may change during the program execution. The next thing is we should learn how to name them, because there are some rules you need to follow. So let's look at what are the rules of creating variable names. Now here are the rules. When we write a variable name, the first character should start with a letter or a underscore. And after the first character, right, you can have letters, underscores, or digits. Third one, the names are case sensitive. If you mix capital and simple, you get different set of variables. For example, if you take my name, all simple, and if you say my name in capital, they are not the same. Since it is case sensitive, Python treats them separately. So you have to be very careful on this. So let's look at some valid names. If you say I, just a single character, it's a valid identifier name, isn't it? Let's look at the second one. Underscore, underscore, my, underscore name. Again, correct. The first letter is underscore, then others are some alphabetical characters. Similarly, name underscore 23, A1, B1 underscore C3. These are some valid identifiers or variable names. Okay, can you tell me why the last set of statements are incorrect or invalid? Let's start with the first one. Why do you think the first one is invalid? Yes, because of the spaces. Spaces are not valid characters. What's wrong with my name? Yes, we have a hyphen. Again, this is also not in the list. Right? So similarly, you should be able to identify different variable names. Right. Try these 3 commands in your office. Sorry. What I want you to do is just type these lines in the browser and try to run this. There are small mistakes. And report me what are the errors in these codes. Let's start with the first one. What are the errors in the first one? Okay, let's focus on the variable names. 76 trombones. Is it a valid variable name? Is it a valid? No, right? We have to specify numbers. So we have 76. So this is not possible because start with the yes letter. a number here. Then what is the problem with the more dollar? So special characters are also not allowed. Third one. Is there anything wrong? The third one? Yeah, the last one is very interesting. Nothing wrong with the variable, but this is called a special keyword. So Python, we have about 35 keywords in version 3.10. And remember, they are used in Python programs, but you cannot use them as a variable name. Right? And you can notice that most of them are simple case. There are a couple of so in this couple, you see the first character is capital. Right. So any of these names, you are required not to use as variable names. Right. Next one. Now let's look at assignments where you need to create a variable. Right. Now what happens here? So in the memory, we say A equals 10. So in one space, you put 10. And this is so when we say A equals 10, what happens in a memory, you reserve a location to store 10 and you will label it as A. Then the second one, you say there's another label called B and it's equal to A. So when you say equal to A, it will refer the same value. So now that A is 10, B is 10. When you say A plus B, yes, you will get 20. Okay, try these steps. And once you finish, please raise your hand. Right, let's take a new code window. I'm going to create a variable name called greeting and then store a string value. Right? And when you say print greeting, yes, it says hello world. Then we can say type greeting. Right, try the other one as well. Okay, so next one, we create a variable called n, we put 17 and we print in. Now this time I'm putting everything in the cell. So I can say print type in. So since I have multiple statement, I use print twice. So you can say here we assign 17 to variable n. When you say print n, it will print 17. And when you ask to print type in, that means we request the type of the variable and it says it integer type. Similarly, let's try the last one. So we have created a variable called pi and we store 3.14. Let's print it. Let's print the type of pi. So you can see how it works. Okay. Right. Let's move to the next one. Thanks, everyone. You can lower the hands now. Right. Now, here we are going to talk about the Python statements. When you say an expression, you can have values, you can have variables, you can have operators, and even you can have functions. Now let's look at the first statement. We added two numbers, 1 plus 1. Second one, we are adding variable A and B. Right. The first one we are adding values, second one we are adding two variables. Third one is a function code. So len is actually getting a length of character inside the string. So let me show you. So if I say 1 plus 1, it's a simple value addition. You can get the answer. It's like a calculator here. Let's try the second one. I'm going to assume A equals 15, B equals, yes, 23 here. So if I say print A comma A plus B, print A plus, sorry, A plus B. Yes, you are adding variables. Next, you can have length of something. If it is a string, it will give you the number of characters. Right, let's move to the next one. Now, next part, we are going to talk about something called operators and operands. The meaning that the operators are called special tokens, like if you take addition, right? They are called operators. Then when you use addition, you need some values. The values are known as operands, right? So there are many operators we are going to discuss. The first one we call arithmetic operators. So the first one is addition, second one is subtraction, third one multiplication, then division, exponentiation, integer division, modular division. Let me explain with some examples. Right, now the first one is called addition. Right, now I'm going to take two values, let's say 10 and 3. So I'm going to use 10 plus 3, adding two numbers. So this could be 13, right? Then second one, subtraction, 10 minus 3. We give 7 as the answer. Third one, multiplication, 10 multiplied by 3. We'll get 30 as the answer. Then division. Let's take 10 divided by 3. We get the answer 3.33 something. Second one, exponentiation, that means power of. So when you say 10, 2 stars and 3, so that means 10 to the power 3. So 10 to the power 3 is 1000, right? Right, let's move the next one. The next one is called integer division. That means you divide 10 by 3, right? And you take only integer part of it. So when you divide 10 by 3, you will get 3.7. So you will take integer part of it, that is 3. So you will get 3 as the outcome. Right, next one, 10. Yes, we are going to take the remainder, 10 divided by 3, the remainder, that is 1. Okay, right. Now, next, now that we have understood how these operators working, we need to practice them. But before that, you have to look at the order of the operations. If you have addition and subtraction, they are equal. But if you have divide and multiply, right? So you have to follow the rules. PEMDAS, which means parentheses, you have to consider first, then the power of exponentiation, then multiplication, division, finally addition and subtraction, right? Okay, so let's see. Okay, so small exercise for you guys. First, I want you to work on your hand, then use Python interpreter to get the outcome. Okay, let's start. Okay, let's move to the next one. Now, similar to operations with the numbers, we can also talk about operation with the strings as well. But if you try the first set, you will get errors. For example, if you use the mathematical operators like this, if you have like 15 but represent as a string value, and if you try to subtract 1, you will get an error. So for example, if I take 15, but I represent 15 as a string value, this is very important. And if you try to subtract, let's say 1, you will get an error. So it's not possible to perform some general mathematical expressions. But there are two exceptions, right? First one, if you have two strings value and if you have a plus in between, for example, if you say banana, and then this is one string, then nut bread. So these are two string values. Then you have a plus operator in between. And you see it actually glue these two strings together. Actually, this is known as concatenation, right? And this works only with two string values. So if you have two strings values, if you have a plus operator, usually we call this is concatenation. It will combine the two strings. Similarly, if you have a string value, let's say fun, and if you multiply with the number, it repeats that. So for example, if you have fun into 3, and if you run it, you will get fun, fun, fun. Right? So these are two special cases, especially operators on string values. There are other applications as well. Now, for example, early days, right? We use, before we had graphical user interfaces, we use, textual interfaces. For example, if you have like a star like this, and if you multiply by, let's say 30, so you will get the set of stars which form a line. And this is how people have drawn some lines in early days. Similarly, let's take, for example, underline. And if you multiply by 30, this looks like a line, right? So the idea that we have used is we use a string value, and then when you multiply with the number, it repeats the string with the number of times you specify with the number. Make a note of this. If you have finished up to this point, please raise your hands. Right. Let's move to the last one. Now, today's discussion, we discuss in basics in Python programming, and we discuss very basic data types, integer data type, that is whole numbers, then floating data type, the numbers with decimal point, and finally string data type, right? Now, sometimes we need to convert these different types. Now, for example, we need to convert a floating point number to let's say integer value. So this is possible. So for example, if I say int 3.14, which means I'm actually trying to convert this 3.14, that is the floating point number, into an integer value. And that means it simply discard the numbers with the decimal point, right? And remember that in this particular case, it doesn't matter like what numbers you have here, it simply discard. For example, if you use int 3.8, right? Simply, it'll be just 3. It simply discard the decimal part of this. Similarly, let's say we have just 3, and if you are trying to convert to the floating number, that is also possible. So in that particular case, what happens? It'll convert this integer value into floating point number. Okay. Right. Let me show you another one. Let's say I'm going to try to convert this into a string value. So we have 3, that is integer value, convert into a string value. So what happens? Now the number is represented as a string value. Yes, there's 3 like this. So we can convert. But remember that there are some cases we might not be able to convert everything as expected, right? So you have to be very careful as well. Okay, try the following. And when you finish, please raise your hands. And this is the last slide for today's session. And we'll continue from next week. Make sure you go through the notes. I will upload the notes together with the recording.